The massive ship called Stellar Harmony drifted through the endless darkness of space like a silver needle threading through black cloth. Inside its metal walls, 847 beings from 12 different worlds worked together on something that could change the galaxy forever. The ship was huge, bigger than most space stations, with corridors that stretched for kilometers and rooms that could hold hundreds of people at once. Commander Jiho walked through the main research lab with steady steps. He was a human, one of 127 humans aboard the ship. The rest were aliens from the Galactic Federation, beings with strange shapes and colors that humans were still learning to understand. Jiho had been chosen to lead this mission because humans were good at working with others, or so the Federation said. He stopped beside a table where Dr. Minho was studying something that looked like a crystal made of light. "How long until we understand what these things do?" Jiho asked, looking at the artifacts that filled the room. They were beautiful and strange, glowing with soft colors that seemed to move like water. Some were small enough to hold in one hand. Others were as tall as a person. All of them hummed with power that their machines could not measure. Minho looked up from his work. He was younger than Jiho, with eyes that always seemed to be thinking about 10 different things at once. "These artifacts are older than any civilization we know," he said, touching the crystal gently. "They respond to touch, to thought, even to emotion, but they respond to humans differently than they do to other species." "Different how?" "When the Kalari touch them, nothing happens. When the Vorthan connect their mind-reading abilities to them, they get only silence. But when we touch them..." Minho placed his hand on the crystal and it began to glow brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. "They wake up?" Jiho felt a chill run down his back. The Federation had found these artifacts on a dead world at the edge of known space. They were supposed to be just interesting rocks from an ancient civilization. But if they responded only to humans, what did that mean? Before he could ask more questions, Hyuna's voice came through the ship's communication system. She was the chief engineer, the person who kept the massive ship running. "Commander Jiho, please come to the engine room. We have a problem." Jiho made his way through the ship's corridors, passing aliens of all shapes and sizes. The Kalari looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and forearms. The Vorthan were round and covered in fur with big eyes that could see thoughts. The Zephyrians had wings and sang to each other instead of speaking. There were others too, species that humans had only met a few years ago when Earth joined the Federation. The engine room was a cathedral of metal and light, filled with machines that hummed with the power of stars. Hyuna stood beside the main control panel, her face worried. She was small but strong, the kind of person who could fix anything if you gave her enough time and tools. "What's wrong?" Jiho asked. "The aliens are acting strange," Hyuna said quietly. "They keep getting messages on their private communication devices, secret messages, and they're all looking at us funny." "Funny how?" "Like they're sad about something, like they know something we don't." Jiho frowned. He had noticed it too, the way conversations stopped when humans walked into rooms, the way alien crewmates avoided eye contact. He had thought it was just stress from the mission, but now he wasn't sure. In the communication center, Taman was working at a station surrounded by screens showing star charts and message logs. He was the youngest human on the ship, barely old enough to be in space, but he was brilliant with communication systems. When Jiho entered, Taman looked up with confusion on his face. "Commander, I'm picking up a lot of encrypted messages between the alien crew members," Taman said. "I can't decode them, but they're all using emergency communication channels." "Emergency channels?" "The kind used for evacuation orders." Before Jiho could respond, the ship's general alarm began to sound. Not the normal work alarm, but the deep, urgent sound that meant everyone should stop what they were doing and listen. The voice that came through the speakers belonged to Admiral Daeun, a Kalari who had been Jiho's friend for 3 years. "Attention all crew members. Due to contamination protocols, all non-human personnel must evacuate immediately. Proceed to your assigned evacuation pods. This is not a drill." Jiho ran to the nearest observation window and watched in growing horror. as escape pods began launching from the ship like seeds from a dying flower. Hundreds of them carrying away every alien on the ship. In less than 2 hours, the massive vessel that had been home to 847 beings now held only 127 humans. The humans gathered in the main meeting room, confused and frightened. They were scientists and engineers, not soldiers. They had joined this mission to explore and learn, not to be abandoned in the middle of nowhere. Jiho stood before them, trying to look calm, even though his heart was racing. "The aliens have left us," he said simply. "We're alone." Dr. Minho raised his hand. "The artifacts are still responding to us. Maybe that's why they left. Maybe they're afraid of what we might discover." Yuna checked her tablet. "Life support is working, but barely. They sabotaged the main systems before they left. Food production is down to 30%. The fusion reactors are running on emergency power, and the navigation system has been completely wiped. Can we fix it?" Jiho asked. "Maybe, but it will take time, and we don't know how much time we have." Taman looked up from his communication station. "I've been trying to send messages to Earth, to any Federation world, to anyone who might help us. But they've disabled the long-range communication array. We can't call for help." The room fell silent. They were 2,000 light-years from Earth, alone on a ship they barely understood, with failing systems and no way to call for help. Outside the windows, stars that had once seemed beautiful now looked cold and distant. Dr. Minho stood up slowly. "The artifacts," he said. "They're the key to this. The aliens weren't afraid of contamination. They were afraid of us learning something important." "What could be so important that they would leave us to die?" Jiho asked. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." As the humans began to organize themselves into teams, trying to figure out how to survive, the artifacts in the research lab pulsed with gentle light. They had been waiting for millions of years for the right species to find them. Now, finally, they had found humans. And humans, as the galaxy would soon learn, were very good at surviving against impossible odds. 3 months had passed since the aliens abandoned them, and Commander Jiho felt older than his 42 years. Every morning he woke up hoping that today would be the day they found a solution, and every night he went to sleep knowing they were one day closer to dying in the cold darkness of space. The ship that had once felt like home now felt like a tomb waiting to be sealed. He walked through the corridors that had once been filled with the sounds of different species working together. Now they echoed with only human voices, and there weren't enough of those. They had lost 15 people in the first month when a section of the ship lost life support and they couldn't fix it in time. Each death hit the survivors like a physical blow, reminding them how fragile their situation really was. In the engine room, Huna was lying under a massive machine, trying to repair something that was never meant to be fixed by human hands. Her clothes were dirty with oil and her face was streaked with exhaustion, but she hadn't given up. She never gave up. "How bad is it today?" Jiho asked, though he already knew the answer would be worse than yesterday. "The food makers are down to 20%, Huna said without stopping her work. "The air cleaners are making strange noises that probably mean they're about to break, and the fusion reactors are running so low on power that we might have to shut down half the ship just to keep the other half alive." Jiho nodded. They had been shutting down sections of the ship for weeks now, moving everyone into smaller and smaller spaces. Soon they would all be crowded into just a few rooms, breathing recycled air and eating food that tasted like metal. "What about the navigation system?" "Still completely wiped. Even if we could get the engines working properly, we have no idea where we are or how to get home." In the research lab, Dr. Minho was working with the artifacts like a man possessed. He barely slept, barely ate, spending every moment trying to understand the ancient technology that seemed to be their only hope. The artifacts glowed brighter when he was near them, as if they were trying to communicate something important. "Tell me you have good news," Jiho said as he entered the lab. Minho looked up with eyes that were red from exhaustion. "The artifacts aren't just responding to us," he said. "They're trying to teach us something. Every time I touch them, I get images in my mind. Pictures of space, of energy, of things I don't understand yet. Can they help us fix the ship?" think they can do more than that. I think they can give us power, real power, but using them is dangerous. Dangerous how? They want to connect directly to our minds, not just touching them, but letting them into our thoughts. The last species that tried something like that. Minho gestured to the empty corridors around them. They're all gone now. Before Jiho could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Not the gentle beeping that meant a minor problem, but the harsh screaming sound that meant people were about to die. Huna's voice came through the communication system, tight with panic. "Commander, the main air recycling system just failed. We have maybe 6 hours of breathable air left in the sealed sections." Jiho ran to the engine room where Huna was staring at a control panel filled with red warning lights. Around her, other humans were working desperately to fix machines they didn't fully understand, using tools that weren't designed for human hands. "Can we fix it?" Jiho asked, though he could see the answer on Huna's face. "Not with what we have. The aliens took all the replacement parts when they left. We've been making repairs with spare parts and hope, but we're out of both." Taman came, running into the room, his young face pale with fear. "Commander, I'm picking up something on the long-range sensors. Ships, a lot of them, and they're heading straight for us." "Federation ships?" "I think so, but they're not broadcasting any rescue signals. They're coming in attack formation." Jiho felt his world collapse around him. They had hoped that maybe, somehow, the Federation would come to rescue them. Instead, it looked like they were coming to finish what the evacuation had started. Yes, humans had been left to die quietly, but now that they were still alive, more direct action was needed. How long until they get here? 18 hours. Jiho looked around the room at his people, engineers and scientists, researchers and support staff. Good people who had never hurt anyone, who had only wanted to explore and learn. Now they were going to die because they had discovered something that scared the most powerful alliance in the galaxy, unless they fought back. "Minho," Jiho said, "those artifacts. You said they could give us power." "Yes, but the risk. We're already dead. The air runs out in 6 hours, or the Federation kills us in 18. Either way, we don't survive. So what do we have to lose?" Minho was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "We'll need to interface directly with the largest artifact. Let it into our minds completely. It could kill whoever tries it. Then I'll do it." "No," Minho said firmly. "I've been studying them for months. I have the best chance of surviving. The connection. Besides, you need to coordinate our defense." "What defense? We're a research ship. We have no weapons." Huna looked up from her repairs with a strange smile on her face. "Commander, we have the best weapons factory in the galaxy. We just haven't been thinking of it that way." "What do you mean?" "This ship has industrial fabricators designed to make anything we need. Tools, spare parts, equipment. But with the right programming, they could make other things too. Dangerous things. You want to turn our manufacturing systems into weapons? I want to turn everything into weapons. The loading drones, the cargo containers, the mining equipment we brought for the dig site. None of it was designed for fighting, but desperate people can be very creative." Taman was working at his communication station, his fingers flying over the controls. "I can use the artifacts to boost our communication array. Maybe we can call for help." "Help from who?" Jiho asked. "The Federation wants us dead." "Not the Federation. Earth. Other human colonies. There are humans all over the galaxy now. Maybe some of them are close enough to help." As the humans worked desperately to prepare for the impossible, Dr. Minho walked into the artifact chamber alone. The largest artifact was a crystalline structure twice as tall as a person, humming with energy that made the air itself seem to vibrate. He had studied it for months, but he had never dared to make full contact. He placed both hands on its surface and opened his mind completely. The connection was like being struck by lightning made of pure thought. Images flooded his mind faster than he could process them. Ancient civilizations rising and falling, technologies beyond imagination, secrets that had been hidden for millions of years. And through it all, a voice that wasn't quite a voice and speaking words that weren't quite words. "You are the ones we have been waiting for. You are ready to inherit what we have left behind. But first, you must prove that you can survive. The artifact pulsed with power, and throughout the ship, dead systems began to come back to life. Air recyclers hummed with new energy. Lights that had been dim blazed bright. The fusion reactors that had been failing suddenly ran at full capacity. But the price was terrible. Minho collapsed, blood running from his nose and ears. The connection had nearly killed him, and he could feel the artifact's presence in his mind like a living thing. He was no longer entirely human, but he was still alive, and now finally they had a chance to fight back. Outside in space, the Federation fleet was getting closer, but the humans were no longer the helpless victims they had been that morning. They had power now, ancient power that their enemies didn't understand, and they were about to show the galaxy what happened when you left humans to die. They had made a mistake. Humans, as it turned out, were very hard to kill. The Federation fleet dropped out of hyperspace like wolves surrounding wounded prey. 12 massive warships, each one capable of destroying a planet, formed a perfect attack formation around the lonely research vessel. Commander Jiho watched them through the main view screen, counting weapons that could turn his ship into dust in seconds. Incoming transmission, Taman reported from his station. His young hands were steady, but Jiho could see the fear in his eyes. Put it through. The main screen filled with the image of Admiral Dayun, the Kalari who had once called Jiho friend. Her blue skin looked paler than usual, and her forearms moved with nervous energy. Behind her, Jiho could see the bridge of a Federation dreadnought, filled with alien officers who wouldn't meet the camera's gaze. Commander Jiho, Dayun said, her voice formal and cold. You and your crew have been exposed to dangerous alien technology. For the safety of the galaxy, you must surrender the artifacts and submit to cleansing procedures. Cleansing procedures, Jiho repeated. You mean execution? I mean what is necessary. The artifacts you have discovered are too dangerous to remain in human hands. They corrupt those who use them, turn them into something inhuman. We cannot allow that corruption to spread. Jiho felt anger burning in his chest like a star going nova. These beings had abandoned his people to die, sabotaged their ship, left them stranded in the cold darkness of space. And now they wanted to talk about corruption. You left us to die, he said quietly. You took our friends, our colleagues, people we trusted. You sabotaged our life support and our navigation systems. You condemned 127 innocent people to death in space. And you think we're the corrupted ones? Dayun's expression didn't change, but Jiho saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or regret. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Your species is young, Jiho. You don't understand the dangers that exist in this galaxy. Some knowledge is too dangerous to possess. Then why did you bring us here? Why did you let us discover the artifacts if you never intended for us to use them? Because we needed to know if they would respond to you. And now we do. The test is complete. Your usefulness is at an end. The transmission cut off, leaving the humans alone with the knowledge that their former allies had never seen them as equals. They had been tools, nothing more. Useful for a while, but now ready to be discarded. Battle stations, Jiho said calmly. Around him, humans who had never been soldiers prepared for a war they couldn't win. In the engineering section, Hyuna was working with a team of technicians to turn their peaceful research vessel into something that could fight back. The industrial fabricators had been running non-stop for hours, creating swarms of improvised missiles from cargo containers and mining charges. It wasn't much against 12 military dreadnoughts, but it was better than nothing. How many missiles do we have? Jiho asked through the communication system. 347, Hyuna replied. They're not military grade, but they'll make noise when they hit. Dr. Minho was in the artifact chamber, his hands pressed against the largest crystal structure. The connection he had made hours earlier was still active, and through it he could feel the ancient power flowing through the ship's systems. The artifacts were teaching him things, showing him how to manipulate space and time in ways that should have been impossible. Minho, what can those things do in a fight? Jiho asked. I'm not sure, Minho replied, his voice strained. They're not weapons, exactly, but they can bend space, create fields of energy, maybe even affect time locally. The problem is, using them is killing me slowly. Every minute I stay connected, I lose a little more of what makes me human. Can you last long enough to help us fight? I can try. Taman was at his station, fingers dancing over controls that now pulsed with artifact-enhanced power. The ancient technology had boosted their communication systems far beyond normal capacity, and he was using that power to call out across space, sending messages to every human colony, every Earthship, anyone who might hear them and care. Any response to our distress calls? Jiho asked. Nothing yet. We're too far from human space. Even if someone wanted to help, they couldn't get here in time. The first Federation dreadnought opened fire without warning, sending a stream of energy bolts toward the research vessel. The Stellar Harmony twisted and rolled, using maneuvers it was never designed for, as Huna pushed the engines beyond their safety limits. Most of the shots missed, but one grazed the hull, tearing a hole the size of a building in the ship's outer armor. "Return fire," Jiho shouted. The improvised missiles launched in waves, spinning and weaving through space like angry metal wasps. They weren't fast enough to avoid the Federation's defensive systems, and most of them were destroyed before they could reach their targets. But a few got through, exploding against the shields of the enemy ships with flashes of brilliant light. The Federation fleet responded with overwhelming force, 12 warships firing at once, their weapons designed to crack planets and shatter moons. The Stellar Harmony was hit again and again, its hull torn open in dozens of places. Systems failed throughout the ship as atmosphere bled into space through holes that emergency shields couldn't cover, but the humans kept fighting. Yuna rerouted power from damaged systems to weapons, keeping their improvised arsenal firing, even as explosions rocked the ship around her. Taman used the artifacts to jam Federation communications, making it harder for them to coordinate their attacks, and in the artifact chamber Minho pushed his connection deeper, drawing more power from the ancient crystals even as they burned him from the inside out. "I can create a space distortion," he gasped through gritted teeth. "Hide us from their sensors, but it will take everything I have." "Do it," Jiho said without hesitation. The artifacts pulsed with blinding light, and suddenly the Stellar Harmony seemed to flicker and bend, becoming harder to see and target. The Federation ships fired wildly at shadows and echoes, their sophisticated targeting systems confused by technology they didn't understand. But it wasn't enough. The research vessel was dying, its hull breached in 17 places, its life support failing in section after section. Of the 112 humans who had survived the first attack, only 43 were still alive, sealed in the artifact chamber as the rest of their ship burned around them. Jiho gave a final log entry as Federation ships closed in for the killing blow. "This is Commander Jiho of the Stellar Harmony. We fought as hard as we could, but we were never soldiers. We were explorers, scientists, people who believed in the dream of species working together among the stars. That dream is dead now, killed by fear and hatred, and the belief that some beings matter more than others. If anyone finds this log, remember us. Remember that we tried to do the right thing even when the galaxy turned against us." Dr. Minho placed his hand on the largest artifact one final time, whispering a prayer to gods he wasn't sure existed. Around him, the surviving humans held each other close, waiting for the end. The Federation fleet charged their weapons for the final strike, preparing to erase the last evidence of human defiance. Then space itself seemed to scream. Something massive tore through the fabric of reality, dropping out of hyperspace in a way that should have been impossible. It wasn't just a ship. It was a moving city, 15 kilometers of metal and energy that dwarfed the Federation dreadnoughts like a whale among minnows. The newcomer's transmission cut through every communication channel at once, spoken in perfect, galactic standard but with an accent that made Jiho's heart leap with impossible hope. "This is Captain Suyon of the Earth Alliance vessel Endurance. You are in violation of Terran-protected space. Stand down immediately." Admiral Daeun's response came quickly, filled with confusion and growing fear. "There are no human ships of that size. Your species lacks the technology. Captain Suyon's reply was calm and cold as winter on Earth. You left our people to die, Admiral. That was your first mistake. Your second was assuming we would stay, helpless. As the Federation fleet watched in growing horror, space began to fracture around them. One by one, massive human vessels emerged from impossible angles, ships that moved through space in ways that violated every law of physics the galaxy understood. The silence had been broken, and the galaxy was about to learn that humans were much, much harder to kill than anyone had imagined. Captain Suyon stood on the bridge of the Endurance, watching the Federation fleet through eyes that had seen too much death in the past 2 years. She was not a tall woman, but she carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who had been forged in the fires of betrayal and loss. Behind her, the bridge crew worked at stations filled with technology that should not have existed, built from desperation and the refusal to accept defeat. Status report, she said calmly. 12. Federation dreadnoughts in attack formation around the research vessel, reported Lieutenant Quan from the tactical station. The stellar harmony has taken severe damage. Life signs show 43 humans still alive in the artifact chamber. Survivors from my old unit, Captain Suyon said quietly. She had served with Commander Jiho years ago, before the betrayals began, before Earth realized that the Galactic Federation saw humans as disposable tools rather than equals. Signal the fleet. Full deployment. Space around the Federation ships began to ripple and bend as more human vessels emerged from what looked like tiers in reality itself. The Prometheus, the New Horizon, the Defiant Star, names that carried the weight of human determination and the memory of those who had been abandoned to die. Each ship was massive, built using technology that combined human engineering with knowledge extracted from ancient artifacts by scientists who had paid terrible prices to understand alien secrets. Admiral Daeun's image appeared on the main screen, her blue skin pale with shock. This is impossible. Your species was barely capable of basic spaceflight 2 years ago. These ships, this technology, where did you get it? From the same place your people have been getting it for thousands of years, Captain Suyon replied. From the ruins of those who came before us. The difference is we were willing to pay the price to understand what we found. The price? Daeun's forearms moved nervously. What price? The price of becoming something more than what we were. Your species found ancient artifacts and used them as tools, never daring to truly connect with them because you were afraid of what you might become. We had no such luxury. When you left our people to die, we had to choose between remaining safely human and becoming strong enough to survive. We chose survival. On the tactical display, Lieutenant Quan highlighted the positions of both fleets. The Federation ships were powerful, each one a masterpiece of military engineering that had taken decades to build. But they were outnumbered now, and their weapons were designed to fight enemies who followed the same rules of physics they did. Admiral Daeun, Captain Suyon continued, you have one opportunity to withdraw. Take it. The Kalari Admiral's expression hardened. We cannot allow dangerous technology to fall into the hands of primitives. All Federation ships, open fire. Eliminate the human fleet. The response was swift and devastating, but not in the way Admiral Daeun had expected. As Federation, weapons charged and fired, the human ships simply weren't there anymore. They shifted and flickered, moving through space in ways that made no sense, appearing behind and beside their targets like ghosts made of metal and fury. The Endurance didn't return fire with traditional weapons. Instead, streams of energy that looked like liquid light reached out and touched each Federation dreadnought. Where the energy touched, systems simply stopped working. Weapons powered down, engines went silent, shields collapsed. In seconds, 12 of the galaxy's most advanced warships became helpless hulks drifting in space. How? Admiral Daeun whispered, staring at her useless control panels. The artifacts taught us that everything is connected, Captain Suyon explained patiently. Energy, matter, space, time, they're all part of the same fabric. When you understand that fabric, you can do things that seem impossible. You can reach across space and convince a ship's power systems that they don't want to work anymore. You can step between dimensions to avoid weapons fire. You can make 12 warships as harmless as children's toys. Dr. Minho's voice came through the communication channel from the dying research vessel, weak but filled with wonder. Suyon, is that really you? Hello, old friend. Sorry we're late. We came as soon as we got Taemin's message. Taemin's message? The boy's been calling for help for hours. The artifacts gave his communications enough power to reach us halfway across the galaxy. We've been tracking Federation movement for months, waiting for them to make a move like this. On the Stellar Harmony, the surviving humans could barely believe what they were seeing. Through the holes in their ship's hull, they watched as sleek human vessels moved through space with impossible grace, their hulls marked with symbols that matched the ancient artifacts they had been studying. Commander Jiho activated the communication system with shaking hands. Captain Suyon, this is Commander Jiho. We're running on emergency life support. Can you get us out of here? Already on it. The New Horizon is moving into position for emergency evacuation. We'll have you aboard in 10 minutes. But Admiral Daeun wasn't finished. Even with her fleet disabled, even facing technology that made her ships look like primitive toys, she activated the emergency self-destruct sequences on all 12 dreadnoughts. If we cannot stop you, she broadcast on all channels, then we will deny you the satisfaction of victory. The Federation will know what happened here. They will know that humans have become something monstrous, something that must be destroyed at any cost. Captain Suyon sighed sadly. Lieutenant Quan, can you stop those self-destruct sequences? Already done, Captain. Their computer systems are completely under our control now. Then disable them all and prepare for boarding operations. We're going to have some very uncomfortable conversations with our former allies. As human boarding parties move to secure the Federation ships, medical teams from the New Horizon worked desperately to save the survivors from the Stellar Harmony. Dr. Minho was in critical condition, his mind barely holding together after hours of connection with the artifacts. But he was alive, and that was more than anyone had dared to hope. Taemin was carried to safety on a stretcher, unconscious but breathing. Hyuna walked under her own power, supporting Commander Jiho as they made their way to the rescue ships. Around them, the artifact chamber continued to pulse with gentle light, the ancient crystals finally at rest after their long vigil. What happens now? Jiho asked as human medics checked him for injuries. Captain Suyon looked out at the disabled Federation fleet, at the wreckage of the research vessel, at the cost of survival measured in human lives and human souls. Now, we show the galaxy what happens when you leave humans to die in space. We show them that we remember every betrayal, every abandoned crew, every act of casual cruelty committed because they thought we were too weak to fight back. And then we build a better galaxy. One where species work together because they choose to, not because the strong force the weak to serve. One where no one gets left behind to die in the darkness. As the human fleet prepared to depart, Admiral Daeun sat in the detention cell aboard the Endurance, staring at technology that shouldn't exist. She had spent her life believing that the Galactic Federation represented the height of civilization, that humans were primitive newcomers who needed guidance and control. Now she was a prisoner on a ship that could move through space like a living thing, surrounded by beings who had paid terrible prices to gain the power to protect themselves. The humans hadn't just survived their abandonment. They had used it to become something the galaxy had never seen before, something that remembered its enemies and protected its friends, something that the Federation should have been, but never. Whilst outside her cell, space rippled as the human fleet prepared to return to Earth. They carried with them the survivors of the Stellar Harmony, evidence of Federation treachery, and the knowledge that humanity was no longer helpless among the stars. The silence had been broken, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months later, Admiral Jiho stood on the observation deck of Terra Station, humanity's first deep space outpost, and watched the ships that patrolled what had once been empty space. The station was huge, built from materials that seemed to bend light around them, powered by energy sources that hummed with the same frequency as the ancient artifacts. Through the massive windows, he could see human vessels moving through space with grace that still amazed him, their hulls marked with symbols that told stories of survival against impossible odds. He was no longer Commander Jiho of a research vessel. The uniform he wore now bore the insignia of the Earth Alliance Deep Space Command, and the responsibility that came with it felt heavier than any weapon. Behind him, the station buzzed with activity as humans from dozens of worlds worked alongside, aliens who had chosen to abandon the Federation and join something new. Dr. Minho entered the observation deck, moving slowly but steadily. The connection with the artifacts had changed him in ways that were still being understood. His hair had turned white overnight, and his eyes now held flecks of the same light that pulsed through the ancient crystals. But he was alive, and his mind was sharper than ever, filled with knowledge that had taken the original builders of the artifacts millions of years to accumulate. "How are the new students?" Jiho asked. Eager to learn, terrified of the cost, Minho replied, settling into a chair beside his old friend. "The artifacts choose carefully who they will teach. Not everyone can survive the connection, and those who do are never quite the same afterward." Through the windows they could see the Ancient Technology Research Institute, a facility that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that most species couldn't even perceive. Inside, human scientists worked with beings from a dozen worlds, studying technology that had been left behind by civilizations so old their names were forgotten. "Any word from the Federation?" Jiho asked. "They're falling apart. Half their member worlds have declared independence. The other half are demanding answers about how they could abandon entire crews to die in space. Admiral Daeun's testimony at the tribunal didn't help their cause." Jiho nodded. The Kalari Admiral had spent weeks in human custody, forced to confront the reality of what the Federation had become. Her testimony before the Galactic Council had been broadcast across known space, revealing centuries of casual cruelty and systematic abandonment of crews deemed expendable. The Federation's moral authority had crumbled overnight, leaving behind a power structure built on fear rather than cooperation. Huna's voice came through the station's communication system, as familiar and reassuring as it had been during those desperate months on the dying research vessel. "Admiral, we have incoming ships, 3 human vessels and something I've never seen before." Jiho made his way to the command center, where Huna worked surrounded by displays showing the movements of ships across dozens of star systems. She had refused promotion beyond chief engineer, claiming that her job was to keep things running, not to give orders. But everyone on the station knew that her word carried as much weight as any admiral's. "What kind of something?" Jiho asked, looking at the tactical display. "It's huge, but it's not using any propulsion system we recognize. No engines, no energy emissions, nothing that should be able to move through space. But it's definitely coming toward us." Taman looked up from his communication station, older now, but still young enough to be amazed by the impossible things he saw every day. "I'm getting a transmission from one of our ships. Captain Suyeon says she's escorting visitors who want to meet with us." The main screen filled with Captain Suyeon's image, and behind her was something that made everyone in time. The command center stopped breathing. It looked like a person, but larger than any human, with skin that seemed to be made of starlight and eyes that held the depth of eternity. "Admiral Jiho," Captain Suyeon said formally, "I'd like you to meet Representative Cosmic Wind Through Ancient Trees of the Builders. They've been waiting a very long time to meet us." The being stepped forward, and when it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, musical and vast like the sound of solar winds singing through empty space. "We are the ones who left the artifacts for you to find," it said. "We are the civilization that came before, the species that faced the same choice you faced when the galaxy turned against you. We chose independence over subjugation, growth over safety, becoming over remaining. And now finally we have found others brave enough to make the same choice." Dr. Minho leaned forward in his chair, his artifact-enhanced eyes bright with curiosity. "You've been watching us? We have been waiting for you, for any species willing to pay the price of true understanding. The artifacts were never just technology. They were tests, trials designed to identify those worthy of inheriting what we learned during our millions of years among the stars. And now?" Jiho asked. "Now you are ready for the next phase of your development. You have proven that humans can survive abandonment, can turn betrayal into strength, can grow beyond what you once were while still maintaining what makes you human. You have built an alliance based on choice rather than fear, protection rather than exploitation. Through the observation windows, Jiho could see the builder's ship materializing fully in normal space. It was beautiful beyond description, a structure that seemed to be grown rather than built, pulsing with the same energy that flowed through the artifacts, but magnified beyond imagination. "What do you want from us?" Hyuna asked, ever practical. "Nothing. We want to give you something. Knowledge, technology, the chance to help other species make the same journey you have made. The galaxy is full of civilizations that have been held back by fear, controlled by those who benefit from their weakness. You could change that." Captain Suyeon's image flickered as her ship drew closer to the station. "Admiral, there's something else. We've been receiving distress calls from human colonies, other species that want to join our alliance, even some Federation worlds that are ready to break away. Everyone wants to know if the stories are true, if there really is an alternative to the Federation's way of doing things." Jiho looked around the command center at his friends, his colleagues, the people who had survived abandonment and betrayal, to build something new among the stars. They were no longer the same humans who had been left to die on a research vessel. They had been changed by their experiences, shaped by ancient technology, forged in the fires of necessity into something stronger than they had ever imagined possible. "Signal all human ships," he said finally. "Tell them to prepare for expanded operations. We have a galaxy to explore and people to help." As the months passed, human ships appeared at the edge of star systems where crews had been abandoned, where species had been forgotten, where the strong preyed on the weak because that was the way things had always been. They came not as conquerors, but as protectors, offering alliance to those who wanted it and safe passage to those who didn't. The Federation's response was predictable: threats, military action, attempts to paint humanity as dangerous invaders who threatened galactic stability. But their words carried less weight now, undermined by their own actions and the testimony of species they had abandoned. On Terra Station, Admiral Jiho reviewed reports from human expeditions across the galaxy. The Vorthon colony ship that had been rescued from pirates. The Kalari research team pulled from a dying ship after their own people left them behind. The mixed crew of scientists saved from a black hole that Federation authorities claimed was too dangerous to approach. Each rescue carried the same message that resonated across the galaxy like a bell tolling the end of an era. Humanity remembers, humanity endures, and humanity never leaves its people behind. Dr. Minho joined him on the observation deck as the artificial sun of Terra Station began its evening cycle. His connection to the artifacts had grown stronger over the months, and sometimes Jiho could see starlight moving behind his eyes, as if he carried a piece of the cosmos within himself. "Do you ever regret it?" Jiho asked. "What we've become?" Minho was quiet for a long moment, watching human ships return from missions across the galaxy, their holds full of rescued crews and new allies. "I regret the price we had to pay. The people we lost. The innocence we can never get back. But I don't regret becoming what the galaxy needed us to become." "And what's that?" "The ones who answer when someone calls for help. The ones who remember that every being matters, not just the strong or the useful. The ones who prove that you can become more than what you were without losing what makes you who you are." Outside the windows, space rippled as another human ship prepared to depart for the distant reaches of the galaxy. Its mission was simple: find those who had been left behind, offer them hope, and show them that somewhere among the stars, there, were beings who would never abandon them to die in the cold darkness. The Federation had intended to leave humanity to perish in space, believing they were too primitive and dependent to survive alone. Instead, they had created something the galaxy had never seen before: a civilization built on the simple idea that no one should face the darkness alone. In the end, those who had been left to perish in space had become the ones others looked to for salvation.